All right. Well, hello, Miss
Hello.
Mr. Hikmet. So wonderful to
It's
have you here today.
sorry to do this. It's actually Dr. Hikmet.
Oh my Dr. Hikmet, excuse me.
Thank
Wow,
you.
this is we're off to a great start here. Thank you so much for being here. Just because I decided to do this kind of on a random one, and you very generously agreed to step up and help out here. Which I guarantee, without you being here, this would be a much less worthwhile experience for people to tune into. So, and in where Moody's at, it's what time is it now?
It's 1:02 a.m. I've
Yeah.
full disclosure, I was asleep until about 20 minutes ago because I didn't want to just stay up till 1. I wanted to um I wanted to get some rest. So I'm just awake from my slumber. I'm not quite ready yet, but we'll get there. I'll be fine.
Yep.
I'm
And the
excited to see the
data,
starter.
yeah. So I also did not get a ton of sleep last night. It's early where I'm at, but it looks like the data just dropped. So our embargo is
Ooh.
up. So Moody, I just sent you in our, oh, here I can do it in our own little private chat here. So
Ah.
what's going to happen now is Moody is going to go grab these data from NHTSA. It just got released. Let's see, we can actually post it in our chat here. What's up, chat? Great to see people here saying hi. The link to the data is now in the report. If anybody out there is watching this wants to start digging through that and share your findings, you're free to do that. Obviously, we'd love it for you to share your findings. If you do have thoughts that you want to share, like if you want to come on like we are now and just join the conversation, share your hot takes, share analysis that you've done, hit me up on Twitter at Tweetermeyer. Drop me a DM there and I will give you a link. We can get like as many as I think 10 people at a time on here. So there's room for more. Moody, if you're good, you seeing
I'm
the
good. Yeah,
files?
I'm just reading it while you're talking. It's I'm not seeing files here. I'm just seeing the
Oh,
report, the PDF.
it's just the report. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Initial
this
round
is,
of data.
yeah, I just clicked on that link too. Oh, wait, there's PDF. That's the summary report. Are they not? Okay, so
Data
I was,
down the very bottom.
oh
There's
yeah,
some
yeah.
stuff.
Additional
Download.
info and okay. So one big takeaway from this is that, okay, here we go. The below CSV files. Yeah, it's right there. Do you see it? Here.
CS
If you
below
go there
CSV
and,
files. Got it. Yes.
yep. Okay.
Uh,
So one of the cool things about this, and kind of one of the reasons I wanted to do something live on this, is that like this has never been done before. So what collecting these data, and by the way, I'm going to, because of my sleep status, not use the proper plurals for data because I'm American and we have a hard time with that. But this
yeah.
hasn't been done before, so there's not really like a standard way for NHTSA to do this, and there's been all kinds of questions and speculation like within the industry about how they were going to do this, and we're sort of learning in real time. So one thing that we can do, and so while Moody's wrangling the data, and he will hopefully put together some insights that we can share here based on the raw files that we're now getting access to. In the meantime, while he's working on that, I'm going to go ahead and share some materials that were provided to the media yesterday in advance of this announcement, and these were provided under embargo. There's some basic high-level takeaways in there that you may find interesting. So I'm going to see if I can make that happen here. And I have way too many tabs open as always. Yes. Okay. So let's look at level 2 ADAS. I think that's the real interesting one here.
There's three. There's ADAS and there's ADS
Yeah.
and other.
Okay. So yeah. So there's two separate two separate reporting categories here. One is level 2 driver assistance systems, and the other is ADS, which means an automated driving system. If you're into SAE J3016 levels, which of course Moody and I are both big fans of, essentially it's level 2 is in one report, and that's systems like Tesla Autopilot, Cadillac Super Cruise, and then ADS just means sort of level 3, 4, or 5, which really effectively means level 4. The other ones don't really exist. So, but I think the main focus of this is probably level 2. There's certainly more crashes in the level 2 data than in the ADS data. So this is sort of what you're seeing here is everything that NHTSA has provided in advance to kind of make sense of it. So this is some background on the special general order and all that. So data and limitations, this is actually always the best place to start anytime you're discussing any kind of data, because it's really easy to say sort of like, oh, well, we have the data, right? We know. And the reality is that
it's not all created equal.
Yeah, exactly. Data kind of has taken on this sort of magical quality that it doesn't always deserve. So let's look at what NHTSA tells us about these data. So first of all, access to crash data may affect crash reporting. So and this is one of the interesting things. We're not spoiling anything to say that there's more crashes from Tesla than other manufacturers. We'll show you that in just a sec. But it's important to understand, part of that may be that Tesla has, much more sort of access to telematic data in real time from its fleets than others do. So this is sort of talking about the challenges of getting sort of really, truly 100% accurate look at the number of ADAS involved crashes. Some manufacturers can just, like I say, see these crashes happen in real time, pull the data, comply with this very, very easily. And others, kind of rely on consumer reports or police reports or other ways that sort of the industry generally finds out about crashes today. I think manufacturers generally are pretty good about at sort of having a fairly up to the minute picture of that, but obviously that varies a lot from place to place. And one of the things that's fascinating about this is that Tesla's traditionally kind of been set up differently than other automakers, and so usually it's sort of easy for them to kind of skirt around regulations. In this case, their unique characteristic makes them more easier to comply with. And actually, we have another guest here. Mr. Russ Mitchell of the LA Times is going to join us. Hey, Russ.
Hey, how you doing?
You are live. Welcome. How are you?
Just waking up.
Good morning, Russ.
Good morning.
Me too.
Gone to sleep yet, I would imagine.
Okay, so we're just going through the limitations here real quick. And Russ, feel free to chime in at any moment. But essentially, so the report data may be incomplete or unverified. So there is redacted, confidential business, personally identifiable information. Same crash may have multiple reports, and this is one of the really important ones. Summary incident report data are not normalized, and essentially, so reporting entities are not required to submit information regarding the number of vehicles they've manufactured or operating or the distance traveled. Now, obviously, that's the basic way you want to, the most fundamental way you want to normalize these data, right? Is you want to divide the miles traveled by that, the vehicle or the system, and have that as the sort of, denominator for the number of crashes, right? So you get a crashes per mile, and we don't have that data. So let's just forget all the,
which is like that's a huge thing though. Like not having the vehicle data per the vehicle miles traveled will make this very difficult to compare between the different models, between different makes.
Yep. That's absolutely right. And so, even if you love the results in these data, just try and keep that in mind. You can sort of draw some conclusions from it, but like, this is not the complete picture. This is not, certainly an
what you
apples to
said
apples kind of thing.
before, what you said before really, I think, matters here, in that it's what makes sort of like Tesla's able to detect when their vehicles crash, and that puts them at a bigger, I guess, reporting burden, if you want to call it that, than the others. So when they get into an accident, they know about it, whereas another manufacturer that doesn't have the same sensors on their vehicle might only find things out if a consumer reports it, or they get a police report, or they get through whatever channels at NHTSA or a complaint from there, and then they find out about it, and that's when they report on it. So it's in this case, it doesn't work to their favor.
Yeah, exactly. So, so we had a question from Mark Spiegel in the chat. Mr. Phil Koopman is in there providing answers, which I really appreciate. Great to see both of you, Mark, Phil, here joining the stream and the discussion. So Phil's answer though is correct. Mark asked, if autopilot cuts out 1 second before a crash, how many did Tesla not report? And Phil Koopman says NHTSA requires reporting if automation was engaged within 30 seconds of the crash. That's really important because Tesla's safety report data is only includes, and they say this is like out of a, to be extra conservative, we count every crash where autopilot was active within 5 seconds. NHTSA is requiring reporting for crashes within 30 seconds. And so that's like a huge difference. And I think that 30-second, in my opinion, is a much more reasonable amount of time, because it takes a long time for a driver to regain sort of full situational awareness if they've become complacent. So yeah, go ahead.
There's also if there's a crash here, it might not be the cause of that ADAS. It could be because a vehicle crashed into a system with ADAS in it that was currently running.
That's absolutely right. And I think that's one thing to really keep in mind here in general, with any kind of road safety data. There are always multiple factors in every crash. It's never just one thing. And so that's also something to really keep in mind with all of this. Mark asks, with his trademark skepticism of Tesla, why should we trust any self-reported data from a company run by an easily documented pathological liar? Well, I think the cool thing is that we don't have to take his word for it now. I mean, I think he's been getting away with making these sweeping claims about autopilot safety, and the beauty is that now once we get these big files of data, sort of we can get into them and sort of see, and if there are reports of crashes happening that are not in that data, then we actually have the means now to prove that maybe they're underreporting if that's something that's happening. So I certainly back. A few years back when I was at Bloomberg View, Cruise, people were releasing their disengagement data from California, and there were media reports of these demonstrations that Cruise was doing, and people were reporting disengagements, and they didn't show up in the data, and so you're able to show, hey, they're underreporting. So, this gives us at least an opportunity to investigate whether or not Tesla may be underreporting data. So, but let's look at it. Let's look at what we have so far. Again, Moody is digging into the raw stuff right now, and we'll try and share some insights from that as we can. But so as you can see, a huge percentage of these are coming from telematics. This is sources of level 2 ADAS crash reports. So 139 are from complaints or claims, 258 from telematics, relatively few from law enforcement, media, field reports. Crashes by reporting entity. This is what you came here to see, I'm guessing. And sure enough, Tesla has quite a few more crashes. As NHTSA sort of dryly editorializes here, Tesla, Honda, and Subaru reported the most level 2 crashes. So
if you don't have eyes.
Yeah, right. This is not a really subtle analytics going on here. Tesla's at 273 level 2 crashes reported. Honda's at 90. Subaru is in third place with 10. And right away, Moody, I mean, I think, and Russ, if you have takes on this too, feel free to chime in. But I think like this kind of suggests, okay, maybe, you know, there are issues with some manufacturers relative to others, but like it's hard to explain such a massive discrepancy in data, right?
Well, I'm not sure. Like it's an ADAS crash, sure. And I'd say Tesla arguably has the most usable ADAS. Like I've heard people talk about autopilot more than anything else, but that could be biased in some way. I don't see people nearly as passionate about their what is it for Honda? It's their drive. Is that Honda Drive Pilot or that's Nissan? I don't know what
Drive
Honda's
Pilot
one
is
is.
Nissan. Yeah, I honestly I don't know what ProPilot.
Yeah.
Oh, the ProPilot
ProPilot.
is Nissan. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it could be that those other ones are used less frequently than Teslas, and without those, that's what I was saying about without the vehicle miles traveled, it's difficult to gauge where these numbers lie. But Tesla, the number of Tesla vehicles on the road aren't necessarily the same number as Hondas out there. Do you know if there's like any way of knowing how many of like Hondas with level 2 are out there that are in use versus Teslas?
I don't have that data. I mean, so we know like on the Tesla side that the latest investigation into Tesla, it NHTSA says that the vehicle population that's under that has the, you know, that's in their investigation is like 830,000. So like that's a lot. That's almost 1 million Teslas on the road with autopilot. I think it was something like 830,000. But you're right. Like that's the problem is we don't know unless we can maybe find like a recall or some kind of investigation of Honda's system. That might tell us, but otherwise I don't know. But yeah, I mean, this is interesting because I don't see Nissan reporting anything. And I single Nissan out solely because I've seen some ads for their ADAS. I feel like they run more ads in the US for their driver assistance than a lot of others. And frankly, some of them are a little bit, you know, kind of uncomfortably close to the line of like, you know, what I think maybe is responsible versus not so responsible messaging. Okay. So people are getting into the data, and already we got a report from Richard Park here. So many fields for Tesla say redacted may contain confidential business information. Well, that's business as usual for Tesla. They are very fond of redaction. Okay, so what is the Tom Chambrier? Apologies if I mispronounced your name. What is the working definition of a crash here? So essentially, let's see. Let me get the actual language of the order up here so that I can tell you. So it's definitely it's crashes within 30 where the level 2 ADAS or the ADS was active within 30 seconds. Let's see. So okay. If so the subject vehicle was involved in a crash on publicly accessible road in the United States. The ADS or level 2 ADAS on the subject vehicle was engaged at any time during the period from 30 seconds immediately prior to the commencement of the crash through the conclusion of the crash. C, the crash results in an individual being transported to a hospital for a medical treatment, a fatality, a vehicle towaway, or an airbag deployment, or involves a vulnerable road user. And notice of crash is received 10 calendar days or more after being first served with a standing general order. So basically, yeah. So we're looking. I think the standing general order went into effect on in August. So we're looking at a relatively limited, you know, sort of snapshot of U.S. data anyway. And hang on, let me get back to. Okay. Relatively limited snapshot. But also, I mean, that definition. So that was a really good question, Tom, because how you find what a crash is also a really important piece of this, right? And so in general, that the short answer to that is that there has to be either a fatality, a tow away, a medical transport, or an airbag deployment, or it can involve a vulnerable road user. And so I think that's important to keep in mind, is some of these crashes may have been much more mild than others, but involved a vulnerable road user and therefore had to be reported. So important context. And here we actually have some data. Again, these are sort of insights that NHTSA provided to the press in advance of this data dump. Level 2 ADAS with the highest injury severity. So you can see most of those are unknown. In 46 of these cases, no injuries were reported. 19 of them minor, 22 moderate, serious 5, and 6 fatalities. So I think it's worth noting we have some fatalities in this data set.
ADAS. There's the next page is, I think, the most interesting out of this report.
Okay, so we're looking at the next page here. So
yeah,
walk us through what's interesting.
So this level 2 ADAS vehicle damage shows where what part of the vehicle was damaged when there was an accident. So is it at the front of the vehicle, side, etc.? And the majority of ADAS crashes happened from the front rather than the rear. So it's not about these vehicles getting rear-ended. It's about them hitting other vehicles.
Yeah.
And that's what that's showing.
That is a really good point. Hang on, I have someone. Okay. Yeah, so that's a really good point. So these ADAS crashes, a large percent of them are the vehicle almost certainly probably rear-ending, I would guess, just because rear ends are one of the most common forms of crash. But we don't know that. What we do know is that the front of the vehicles are getting injured, which damaged, which suggests that yeah, as Moody was said, that these level 2 crashes involve vehicles hitting other vehicles. Phil Koopman says from NHTSA level 2 ADAS, yeah, okay, so he's providing the information we were just discussing about what constitutes a crash. So ADAS crashes by state is interesting too, because California is definitely where most of these crashes are happening. Again, I mean, I think, as soon as you saw, how overrepresented Tesla is in the data, I think anyone could have guessed that the majority of those crashes would have been in California. Russ, you're a resident of California. Any thoughts about that, about your state being the home of the most level 2 ADAS crashes, at least in this data set?
Well, if I mean, Tesla is California is by far it's the biggest state in terms of sales. And if Tesla crashes are by far the top of the list, it would be logical. I have a more 30,000 foot question. Looking at these numbers, they did this raw data dump. They don't appear to be having a press conference to answer any questions. And there are caveats all over the place. As we're looking at this here, in terms of miles traveled, what constitutes ADAS with the different automakers. Some have telematics, some doesn't. I'm not sure this tells us much of anything, to tell you the truth.
I mean, yeah, I think there's so you definitely we definitely have to be mindful of the limitations of these data that we sort of discussed earlier. And to NHTSA's credit, they're pretty upfront about those. They're very upfront about those limitations. I don't know if we can, to me, I think, generally in this space, like my rule of thumb is that there's so little, we get so little data about like driving automation technology in general and how it really performs, that it's really easy to sort of take, the few data points that we get and sort of spin them up into and interpret them well beyond what they support. And I think the canonical example of this is the California disengagement reports, right? Where, it's like people are so desperate to like sort of handicap the horse race to autonomy or whatever, that they end up in, sort of using this as these disengagement reports as sort of the metric. And, there too, there's reporting issues. There's, you can't normalize by the types of miles that those vehicles are driving. So, but, I think you can also take that too far, and you can also say like, oh, well, just because this doesn't, directly give us, everything we need to know about the relative, performance of these different companies' systems, it's still a data point. It still provides something, right? And better something than nothing. And so that's kind of generally my take with this, at least so far, is that I'm definitely, would caution anyone against overinterpreting it, but like it is what we have.
How do you interpret it? I mean, I totally agree. It's it's a good first step by a safety agency to finally start collecting and start releasing this kind of information. But forget overinterpreting. How would you interpret it at all? If this were a paper handed into a professor, they'd say, yeah, that's a good start, but what does it tell me?
It depends what you're measuring, Russ. Like, for example, we're focusing a lot on Tesla here, and that's because, I mean, they're the ones that make the biggest and probably most egregious claims when it comes to ADASs. But right. Is that the proper term for pluralization? But they're the ones that, they're the ones that make the biggest claims, and they've got the safety reports, which, I mean, I've talked to death about how those numbers are taken out of context, etc. But looking on the other side of it, like, for example, if someone asks how safe is Super Cruise, I don't know. Like, have there been any high-profile Super Cruise accidents? I was never able to answer that question. But with data like this being made public, we can at least see on an even level, sort of with everyone having an equal ground as far as reporting requirements go, we can see what's happening out there. So I'd argue that this is a little bit useful, Russ.
Well, yeah, I agree. It's a little bit useful. I'm part of my questioning is selfish because I'm trying to determine how to write a story about this. If you look at the number of crashes here, you can make a solid argument just on a macro level that these systems are far safer than human systems. I mean, you have a few hundred crashes over, I guess this is a period of a year with these systems. How many human crashes are there, and what teeny tiny percentage are related to level 2 systems? It would seem that
well, you can't make that claim without knowing how often these systems are engaged. So until you've got data around when these systems are on and off on these same makes and models of vehicles, what are the vehicle miles traveled between accidents, and that's how you'd compare one to the other. But with just reporting of accidents, you don't have access to that. You can't make that claim based on this data.
No, you're saying that. Sorry, if I get too argumentative, just tell me to shut up.
That's fine.
As I understand it, they require any accident that has level 2, any crash that has level 2, it must be reported. So that's the filter that you have to assume that they either were unable to collect the information for level 2 systems that had crashes that weren't reported, which is very possible. But the filter is that so you've got several hundred crashes that are reported with level 2, and you've got how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of crashes, serious crashes that involved only a human driver.
Yeah. So again, I mean, without having and it's more than just, so as Moody was saying, we need, you need to normalize over miles, right? So it's crashes per mile traveled is the basic standard for normalizing, an apples to apples comparison of, say, level 2 ADAS versus humans. But as we've discussed, when we've sort of discussed Tesla safety reports as well, that's sort of what they do, right? Is they just say, okay, autopilot traveled this many miles and had this many crashes. and humans, drove this many miles, had this many crashes. But that, as Noah Goodall's recent paper, really starts proof conclusively, but I think people have known this for a while, is that, unless you normalize for factors that we know also affect safety outcomes on the road, like, for example, what domain was it operating in, that's really required as well to really get closer to something that's apples to apples. And it looks like we are going to be joined here by Taylor Ogan, potentially. Hang on a sec. Okay. Hold on. Hey, Taylor. How's it going?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. So you're at the US Open, is that right? Oh, looks like we lost Taylor. It looks like his signal is poor. Okay, I'm gonna drop him for a sec. Hopefully Taylor can make it and chat a little bit. I know he's paid a lot of attention to Tesla, and it's sort of, is some of the safety risks involved. Go ahead.
To answer your question before, Russ, you were talking about like whether ADAS was engaged or not. So this is self-selected. So the 200 or so incidents include are all with ADAS engaged. So it's filtered for that. So when ADAS wasn't engaged, that's out of scope for this. So that hasn't need to be reported.
No, I understand it doesn't need to be reported, but there were far thousands and thousands more crashes with just human drivers out there. You just look at the
but also
all the time that don't use these systems. And if you have to report these systems and over a year you've had a few hundred crashes, that is, you could argue that is like, wow, this stuff really is better.
Well, again, so many more miles are driven by humans unassisted than humans with ADAS, and so that you need to
I'm talking about, just look at raw numbers. And if I'm thinking about this wrong, just forget the miles traveled. Why are raw numbers not relevant here? Because you've got X number of crashes and just a few hundred. You have to report all the ADAS crashes. You have a few hundred ADAS crashes in a country where there are thousands of crashes a day. I don't know how many are serious according to this, but it's got to be far more than a few hundred in a year. Yeah. So either all the crashes aren't being reported, or there aren't very many ADAS crashes.
Yeah. So, and my initial takeaway from this is that one of my initial takeaways so far is that there may be some issues with reporting here. Like we may not be really seeing everything. And I know that so NHTSA definitely held workshops with manufacturers on sort of how to comply with this standing general order. And for context, I think, certainly I think from the industry's perspective, you talk to people at the companies who would be subject to some of this reporting stuff. They were a little bit surprised by the standing general order. They really weren't consulted in the development of it. I'm not making a judgment about whether they should or should not have.
Sure. Yeah.
But they kind of felt a little blindsided, and so they've had to, NHTSA's had to have these sort of educational, how to comply with these rules. And so it's certainly possible that we're just not getting full reporting from everyone. And again, just to go back to those limitations, because I think these are things we should really keep in mind. So access to crash data may affect crash reporting. And again, I think with Tesla, it's I think we're getting probably, unless Tesla themselves are specifically under reporting, which, as we discussed earlier, we may now have with this data, ways of seeing if they are or not. But I think, clearly just their telemetry and data connected, the fact that every single vehicle in their fleet is connected, has to make a huge difference. And the other automakers are relying on a really kind of wide variety of sources for their data. So, I would say there's definitely a chance that there's some underreporting. I don't know, Moody, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, it's let's look at the number. Let's look at the data. Can I share my
Let's
screen?
look at the data. Yeah. Hang on, I'm gonna stop. Oop, okay.
Share screen.
And hang on, let me see if Taylor, are you there? Can you hear us, Mr. Ogan? Okay. Well, he should just go enjoy his tennis.
Yeah. They did say that. Taylor did mention before that NHTSA are saying that they're going to be releasing these reports every month. So that's So this data is going to be regular. We'll get used to it, and it's nice to have that sort of resolution on it. I've put a request to share my screen. Can you see that?
Oh, sorry. Yep. Hang on. Wait. Sorry. Oh, here we go. General graph. I'm sorry. So you sent a request?
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. It's should be on the left or something like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got it. Boom. All right. We promised data. Here are data.
Cool. So this is Microsoft Excel. I use this. Well, like I've got Python and stuff, but I'm not going to get into that too much at the moment. But this is the data. If you go to NHTSA and download it, this is the CSV you get. CSV, comma separated variables, basically just a big Excel file. And there's three different reports. One is called Other, one's called ADS, and one's ADAS. The interesting thing about the ADS one is we can sort and filter by make. So there is a Tesla in here. So
in the ADS data.
Yeah, there's one vehicle in the ADS data from Tesla.
Hey, Taylor.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, that's the question that I had, was that one Tesla vehicle. Because that has to be a fleet vehicle, right?
I love it. The Taylor Ogan, Mahmoud Hikmet mind meld is...
I'm so jealous that you have Excel right now. They didn't allow laptops.
All right, so how is there a Tesla in the ADS data? Again, ADS means it's level 3, 4, or 5. So actually autonomous, and Tesla doesn't report data, suggesting that any of its vehicles are fully autonomous. Mahmoud, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's fine. Go for it, Taylor. What's up?
So, I mean, I would imagine that if history is repeating itself, it's Tesla recording a video, because that's the only time historically that they've actually logged those, because there's no way to make those videos if they don't report those, right? I mean, it's not the beta, because we know there's more than one beta crash. And so that's why I'm wondering if they're grouping the FSD beta as in the level 2 ADAS.
They must, because that's how they report. They basically, as far as NHTSA is concerned, FSD is a level 2.
Right.
So you are right, though, in the past, and this is how I I was also able to use the California disengagement data to show, like how many disengagements there were when Tesla was filming that painted black video, because you're right, like they would only log in California sort of the equivalent of ADS miles when they were filming video. Go ahead, Moody. It looks like you had something to add.
Yeah, this one's on a rural road in Kentucky, and it happened in April. In Cox's Creek.
So it might be misreporting.
At 8:46 p.m. Like
there's
video? 2 rows here, but it's the same vehicle. It's just 2 different report types.
Where was that bad FSD? Where was that bad FSD beta crash that was on video that went through the yard? I think it was down south somewhere.
The black and white one. I think that was before April.
Yeah.
That was before April, though, wasn't it?
Maybe.
It doesn't feel like it was in April. That one feels, but could be wrong. It's a 2018. It's a 2018 Model 3.
Okay. I can look at it, but you know what? This would be huge if they are counting this as technically not level 2, so therefore level 3 or above, and then therefore they would have to, by definition, report every single disengagement to the California DMV, right?
Yeah, but this is Kentucky. It's different. So it didn't happen in California. It happened in KY is Kentucky, right?
No, I know, but if they're saying that this is technically an ADS, then by definition they would have to then disclose everything.
If that same,
if it's a level 3 there, right?
If that system is level 3 there, but it could be a ADS, because the levels are assigned not by vehicle but by the systems on them. So if this vehicle had some sort of other system on it that was in development that is separate from FSD, could be there. Or it could also be a misreporting. Maybe someone, when saying ADAS, wrote ADS instead because they didn't know the difference. They do look very similar.
Hey, Moody. So one way to maybe look at this is, does it say who reported it, right? Because there's a there's a
Tesla
field
reported it.
Okay, so it came from so it was via telematics. Or
it doesn't say. It doesn't say, from what I can see.
Okay.
Or it's redacted. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's see.
Nothing
Driver,
there.
operator type.
Nothing in there about how it was reported. Yeah.
Okay.
There is this narrative section which would be really good to know, but it's redacted in almost every case.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I check who owns the VIN? The VIN isn't. I don't think this is a complete VIN, is it? It could be. Is there a like?
You want a VIN decoder?
So if you're just
Yeah, I just looked it up. It needs to contain 17 characters, and this doesn't have 17 characters. Yeah, it's an incomplete VIN, so we can't really get the whole thing.
Okay. And there's nothing in the investigation field or anything like that. Because again, these things might
nothing like that. John McDermott's asking about asking about mileage. So there's mileage here, but that's mileage reported for the vehicle at the point of the crash, I'd assume. And that really doesn't tell you much about vehicle miles traveled, because it could be that these miles were clocked up both in a mixture of ADAS use and non-ADAS use. And we've only got, a 10-month window for this data. So it's not like it's not a complete view. This is a 2018 vehicle with 33,000 miles on it, so it doesn't tell you too much. But let's look at
it. Sounds
ADAS.
like this may be. Yeah. Okay. So, and just to be clear, what we were just talking about was the mystery of why is there a Tesla in the ADS data. So anyway, yeah, move on. Moody, talk to us about the ADAS data.
Well, before that, let me spread the gospel of pivot tables. Do you know what those are?
School me.
Pivot tables. So you know how anyone here who's like, I don't get what's so cool about Excel. I don't know why Taylor loves Excel so much. Well, 2 words. Oh, 1 word. It's pivot table. I think it's 1 word in here. Do you want to say something,
filter
Taylor?
By brand. Please filter by
filter by brand.
Yeah, I will. We'll get there. So when you go into Excel, you can highlight the data you've got in a sheet, and in the Insert tab, there's something called Pivot Table here. You click that, then you click OK, and it makes a new sheet that looks scary because you probably haven't done anything with it before, haven't seen it before, but it is pretty cool. What you could do here is you've got all of these fields here. So we've got like report ID, etc. So we can have the make. We drag make down into rows, and now we've got a row of every make that's where something is reported. Then we can grab some other thing that we want to look at. So say like what's the sort of thing we want to look at within its ODD. Could be like the values, and then that could also be the column. So we've got a new column that's been added for like every type of different within ODD, and we can see that it gives us like a really good overview of what's happening inside all of that data. So we can see that there's 7 that were within its ODD, but the majority of them are redacted, which is kind of useless or unknown. So out of everything, there are 9 from 765 reports that claim anything about the ODD of the vehicle, which is not great. Probably not the best description of an ODD is of what a pivot table is directly here. There's what else can we look at? That's weird that whether something is within its ODD or not is redacted or unknown. Like why don't they know that? Why is it hidden? There's within ODD question mark, and then there's within ODD question mark CBI, which is just yes for all of. There's no no's in here. This is confusing. It's not very well sanitized, is it?
Yeah, this was one of the. So, and I actually just got a tip from someone about the other incident report data. Apparently, there's several hundred incidents in the other. So there's a file. For the ADS incidents, there's a file for the level 2 ADS incidents, and then there's an other incident report data file, and that is apparently in the hundreds.
Commas in here.
Yeah. Bentley, Aurora, Denso, WeRide. Whoa, this is
okay. Let's turn this into a pivot table.
Yeah. So this other data is interesting, and I don't. Let me go look at the documents
not
that.
make. We want to look at reporting entity, because something like the comma won't have their own vehicles. They don't make vehicles, but they'll have their devices on vehicles that have okay. This is so much. This is a lot better. Reporting entity, and what could be the thing we measure? Report version. Let's go report submission year, month. Is there like date when the accident happened?
There should be.
Let's just go report submission. So reporting entity might be column. Would it be columns? Reporting type, report submission date. would be the...
So yeah, I have a lot of questions about this other incident reports, other data. This is very confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it shows sort of some of the challenges around reporting here. And we discussed this earlier. Russ was, asking about this. And so we don't know. So I just reread the sort of press release document sort of overview that NHTSA released on these data. And they really don't talk about this other data or other reports category at all. So, and we knew that they would have, one file for ADAS, one for ADS, but like, this other data, are they for like, is it incomplete reporting? Is it where it was ambiguous? Moody, do you have any read on this so far? Or?
There's nothing. There's so much missing data. Like, look at all these columns. There's nothing in here. It's a little bit disappointing. And then there's
right, Go ahead.
And then there's VIN numbers, and sometimes it's the same vehicle over and over again, but there's 10-day update, 1-day reports, and monthly reports. So sometimes you have the same vehicle being reported multiple times, and it appears to be the same incident being reported multiple times.
Right. And so that's something that they do mention in their sort of commentary on the data, is that they say the same crash may have multiple reports. So it says for crashes involving a level 2, this is on the ADAS summary in specific, that meet the reporting requirements of general order. They're required to submit multiple reports for a single crash. In addition, more than one entity may be responsible for reporting the same crash. So there may be multiple. So they do disclose that as a potential limitation of the data. But I mean, I think in general, so like the ADAS and the ADS tables are fairly complete, right? Like the reporting entities that reported did so fairly completely, right? Where most of those fields are full. Whereas in this other data category, it's like some of them, right? So like I see, like it looks like TransDev in particular has a number of reports in here that seem to be relatively complete. Whereas basically everything else in this entire other document is like the name of the reporting, the type of report, just some really, really basic information. So like are these crashes where they're just, the reporting isn't good? Like, it's just so confusing.
Yeah. Do they describe anything about what this other thing is supposed to mean?
That's exactly what I'm saying, is they don't. At least that I've been able to find. Oh wait, hold on. Okay, well, hold on. So reports were the latest. Okay, and this is in reports where the latest ADS equipped ? Field is blanked or contains unknown seat narrative or yes have not been included in this data analysis, meaning in the ADAS file. There may be cases, or at least in their analysis of that file, there may be cases where more than one report is submitted. Okay, hang on a sec. I'm going to go to their webpage and see if they have anything about that other category, because
I see YTZ Mark talking about unless things have injuries per miles driven under ADAS mode would be good. Like I agree, like from a consumer perspective that'd be really good, but until now we haven't had any sort of way to know that there have been level 2 ADAS crashes at all. So just being able to say that ADAS crashes are happening isn't something that we've been able to even put a number to in the past, regardless of VMTs being put in there at all. So yeah, frustrating, but also asking for VMTs on top of this, the vehicles that are in here might not be able to measure the VMTs for their ADASs. So unless, I guess, like Comma AI is operating both, like it's measuring both when things are when it's operating under ADAS and when it's not operating under ADAS, which might not make sense in that case because someone could just turn it off and they'd have no idea whether or not that vehicle is running. So it's just, yeah, I understand saying like VMT would be useful, and I agree, but I don't know how you could very easily request that, you know?
So something on the VMT from Tesla, at least, is in their carbon offset, in their impact report. One of the assumptions in the fine print basically says that our vehicles globally, our global VMT is lower than the U.S. average. So I think they put it around 8,500. So at least Tesla breaks that out, but then we don't know, the utilization of that.
Tesla's one of those companies that has the most telematics available for the manufacturer from their vehicle fleet.
Right, which is why them not releasing more data is not good.
Yes, but also if they want, from Tesla's perspective, like if they want to say treat us fairly, why would they want to be punished essentially for just being able to have more data than others?
Right.
Yeah. So some of this other data may be, so there is something that's, so entities must tell us when they have nothing to report. So the summary incident report data includes monthly no incident reports that do not include any crash information. These reports are intended to be a monthly check-in and are required when entities have not received notice of crashes reportable under the monthly criteria or have no new reportable information to provide from previously submitted reports. So some of that in that other file may be related to that. They may be the sort of, monthly report, checking in, nothing to report kind of situation. But actually, I would say this is becoming my biggest issue with this data dump, and I know there have been a number of concerns, and this one was not really anticipated, is that there would be a third file with almost nothing on the internet. NHTSA folks, if you're watching this, which is not impossible, but unlikely, I guess, please get a crumb of context about this mysterious third data file, because if there are reportable crashes there that are not ending up in ADS or the ADAS file, what's going on with that? What, is this where the data is incomplete? Is this, what's going on? Like I said, a crumb of context for this, because would be amazing, because there's basically nothing either on the internet or in the documents that were provided to the media that explain why the heck there is this third data file. Moody, what have you been finding? Well,
I've just been looking at information here that's like I've now filtering based on the report version so that we don't count the same thing twice, and I'm seeing 339 grand total. I'm trying to get to that 200-ish, 271 for Tesla. I think this is the actual number that we have in the end. So there's trying to understand sort of there's the 10-day update, there's the 1-day report, then there's like a monthly, but Yeah, so do you know what these report versions mean?
Yeah, so hang on a sec. So there is
Can you
stuff on that.
can you unique by VIN and by month?
Yeah,
Just
even if I do,
concatenate. Yeah.
if I do that though, like there's the same VIN on multiple on multiple reports.
Right. So then you only get the one VIN that 1 month, unless it got in 2 accidents.
But sometimes the VIN is unknown as well. There's a whole bunch of
Okay.
unknown.
Or any other unique
There's like
things?
there's VIN for 2 count of. Oh no, not count of VIN. We want. How do I do this? Value field settings. Can I just get like the presence of the presence of this, or like unique by?
Well, so what you could do in one cell for the entire thing is unique by any unique thing. So like the month of when it was reported, plus like right rear, plus anything else that could be unique, and then unique that entire column.
Like you mean make a new a new sheet and look at uniques by thing.
Well, just a new column, and then unique by anything that would like the function when it happened, and then just like combine all this, concatenate, into one single cell, and then unique, and then text the columns, break it back out, so that you actually have then you won't get duplicates if they're in multiple. That makes sense.
If they're in multiple reports, yeah. Then, or like it can be linked to mileage, but mileage isn't always there. Just trying to think of like the best way to link that. It's to know that these aren't maybe the same vehicle got involved in 2 accidents on the same month. I don't know how that can be separated at the moment.
Yeah.
So we have one comment from Tammy Sanders that's interesting. A lot of useless stuff to wade through, but the most telling metrics to me are SV pre-crash movement and injuries.
Let's look at that.
That's interesting. We'll have Moody pull up those data. Tammy, if you're still watching, you're in the chat. Feel free to drop another comment and flesh out why you find that particularly interesting. And I will jump into and to answer your question, Moody, earlier. There are a couple of different report types. So I have, in fact, here I'll drop this in case you want this for your. So this I'm going to put it in the chat here. Hang on, this is in our private chat, but then this is also in the main chat here. This link that I just posted is to NHTSA's guidance for sort of what each of these data categories mean. And so, for example, Moody was asking about reporting type, and the different kinds of report types that might be submitted are 1 day, monthly, no incidents, 10-day update, monthly update, other update. And so that's a little bit confusing. But if you dig into the actual SGO itself, you'll find there are a couple of different ways in which you're required to report based on, crashes that have happened and things like that. Yeah. So, okay.
So SV, there was the pre-crash movement is what Tammy was talking about.
Yeah, SV pre-crash movement and injuries.
So we can look at SV pre-crash movement here, and we can just do like a report version would be just the 2, and then count of report ID. Cool. So proceeding straight is by far the biggest one. There's sort of, this is just what was the vehicle doing when it was involved in an accident. Unknown, 101, which Tesla's the biggest supplier of that. So Tesla, in about a third of cases, doesn't know what was happening when the accident happened.
Interesting.
In 2 cases, they were stopped. In 129 cases, they were moving straight. In 29 cases, they moved off the lane or road departure, 29.
Wow.
So over 10% of accidents is them leaving the lane or the road to get into an accident. This is interesting.
That's huge. Yeah, that's a really, so there was just a fatal crash here near Portland, Oregon, kind of between here where I live and the coast, and a Model Y, I believe, and we don't know if autopilot was involved, but it's a 2-lane country highway. It entered the oncoming lane, and there was a head-on collision, and the person not in the Tesla died. If that was autopilot involved, and the thing is, like, we don't know, because there's enough video out there of Teslas on autopilot or full self-driving literally crossing a double yellow line. We see it for a number of reasons, right? Sometimes it's just, in the older days, it would be like, when it couldn't keep up with the tight twisty turns or something. But like, we actually have seen, I think this is more with FSD beta, like the vehicle literally just sort of lunge into an oncoming lane. And so if there have been 29 crashes, and again, this is just since August, is that, am I giving a good?
Yeah.
You switched to percentages. That's fine.
Yeah. Switch to percentages.
But you said 10% of the crashes. 10% of the crashes.
Let's. How do I make it so that it's conditional formatting? Color scales. There we go. Bam. Well, green is bad in this case, but you can ignore the reds. Let's do this. Let's do this actually. Conditional formatting, color scales. That's fine. Let's just do this. Color scales. There we go. That's better. So yeah, it's even for remove. I don't want to look at it percent. No calculation. Okay, that's a little bit better. Is it confirmed that the data do not have any info to calculate any incidents per capita per miles driven under ADAS? Yeah, Mark, there's no information about the miles traveled. It's just about the number of incidents. But we can break things down in terms of like percentages. So we know that the majority of cases for everyone, actually, it's not just Tesla, is when they're moving ahead, moving straight. And then there's like Audi and BMW, who's just like, it's such a small number of incidents, you can't really extract much information from that. Which ADAS doesn't even support lane changes apart from Tesla. Well, there's things like, I know with Comma AI, you need to get it started by initiating the turn, and then it starts to do the change. But I don't know. I don't know too much about the different the exact sort of functionality of each one. But this preceding straight column is interesting. Traveling wrong way is what? There was one incident where a Tesla was traveling the wrong way.
Wow. So this is
while
interesting too, right?
under
Because
ADAS.
yeah. So we, as we discussed, the reporting on this may be biased towards overrepresenting Tesla to some extent. Potentially, we don't know what we don't know. But I think things like this, where you start to get into these data and find that 29 cases of the vehicle departing the lane, and one in which there was a crash in which a Tesla vehicle that had either autopilot or full self-driving active within 30 seconds of the crash was going the wrong way immediately prior to the crash. Like that's again, like it's only one crash, but like if you have even one crash where a vehicle, when you put on something that involves lane keep assist, you're automating lateral control of the car, as well as longitudinal, right? And the vehicle is taking you, first of all, if it's departing the roadway in 29 cases, that's not good. But if it's putting you in the wrong lane and driving you into oncoming traffic at the time of a crash, that's like about as bad a thing as an ADAS could do, right?
Yeah. it's not good, Ed. Like it's not a but it's like, is it incapable of disengaging when it's not capable of knowing if it's traveling the wrong way down a road? It doesn't have that's not part of the OEDR cover. Like that's not part of the coverage that it has of the OEDR, which is weird. But it's not weird, it's not unexpected, but yeah.
Taylor, you still here? Do you have any thoughts about that? Because I mean, you watched, I know, about as much footage of various Tesla driving automation quote unquote testing as anyone. Do you want to comment on this sort of issue of lane departure and even sort of potentially going the wrong way?
Yeah, I mean, if it's going the wrong way, then I would probably, that's pretty common with FSD beta. And that is something that I could see just steering onto, into oncoming traffic. I bet that, I mean, that one case was probably on FSD beta. Because otherwise it's not like they wouldn't, ADAS wouldn't, the navigate on autopilot, the highway stack would not do that. And that's almost impossible.
Certainly it would be very difficult in a controlled access freeway. And this actually brings up something that I thought was interesting. We can go back to maybe at some point, which is the number of VRUs, considering how few ADAS systems are supposed to be used outside of a freeway, right? If everyone was using these systems like you're supposed to, there would be almost no VRU crashes, and VRUs, vulnerable road user, right? So pedestrians or cyclists, and yet there are some in the ADAS thing. So we can maybe take a look at that in a second, but yeah, I mean, Taylor, I think you're right. Like, I think anyone who's seen a good number of videos and clips of FSD beta testing, that I think I can't think of a time when I saw autopilot. Well, I feel like they've mostly been FSD beta, but Moody, any thoughts?
I'm just trying to find. Sorry, yes.
No, I was going to ask, like, do you agree with like Taylor's sort of general take that probably these lane departures and or certainly the wrong way incident, that was probably FSD beta? Or
probably, but I mean, if you start you can't know that for I'm repeating myself, but you can't know that for sure. Like if there's a Tesla vehicle in that's running in autopilot on a sort of that someone engaged going the opposite way from like down the road, the wrong way, like engaged by a driver to go the wrong way, is like, would that vehicle know? Because it's capable of being operated outside its ODD. So that's one case. Or it could be that someone within 30 seconds of disengaging autopilot or whatever else of their Tesla, then proceeded to travel the wrong way and get into an accident. So we don't know from the data that you're always going to lose information, and that's lost in here. But
Yeah.
certainly
So,
it's not a good look. Yeah.
Go ahead, Taylor.
Yeah, sorry, I just need to get back to golf. But my quick takeaway is this is not unnecessary data or meaningless. It's not complete data, but my conclusion so far is that this is great data. It doesn't tell everything, but anyone saying you can't take anything away from this is wrong.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, and it's anytime you have a situation like this, there's a balance to be struck, right? Between sort of, not again, like we were saying, sort of what happens with the disengagement reports is that, you get one crumb of data about this area that people are really, really curious about. And the tendency is to make that one data point, the thing that sort of explains this whole world to you. And obviously we need to avoid doing that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, so, and like, even again, to compare to the disengagement report data, I mean, I've broken a couple of like what I thought were pretty juicy stories based on that California disengagement data, not sort of trying to present it as, oh, this is the be all end all, but it's something that you can use to sort of check against other things, right? And so, like, the two stories that I did, one was sort of showing that Tesla was getting a disengagement. I can't remember the exact number, but like that there were like tons of disengagements while Tesla was filming the Paint It Black video. Like, I think that's a really huge story, and it's a really important piece of this because it shows Tesla was misleading the public when they say like drivers only behind the wheel for legal reasons. Like, no, the driver's there behind the wheel because you were disengaging like every mile or something like that, maybe every like 3 miles or something. I don't remember the exact numbers. And then the other one was that, and this one it snuck some original reporting on this into a Bloomberg opinion piece back when I was contributing to them. But I mentioned earlier in the stream, which is that Cruise essentially was underreporting disengagements to the California DMV. I don't know if anything really ever came of that. But again, I think, like, if you have data, then you can start to use that in ways that, where you sort of cross-check it with other things or use that as a sort of basis point. And so yeah, Taylor, I agree. I think anybody in driving automation space who wants to see less data out there, I question their motivations for that. I think any amount of data that we get is good. It's just really important to keep it in context. Moody?
Yeah, completely agree. Mark is saying that asking about if this data cannot rule out or rule in whether Tesla AP has fewer accidents per mile driven compared to other ADAS or unassisted. That's not really the point of what this data is. So it can't answer that question, no, but that's not what you should be using it for.
Yeah, and again, I think it's really, part of the problem we're dealing with, right? So in this sort of absence of data that we've had up literally before this morning, before today, it's been really easy for Tesla to just put out this one number, right? And so they do have it by mile, right? So those Tesla quarterly safety reports, it says, here's the number of miles driven under autopilot, here's the number of crashes, here's the same with humans. And again, as we pointed out there, like, even that, which we don't have here, right? We don't have a crash rate per mile of operation. But then we also, you need, in addition to that data that's being reported, you also need a baseline that gives you something close to an apples to apples point of comparison. And with autopilot, for example, like, we know Tesla allows you to activate it outside of its operational design domain, but presumably, and again, Noah Goodall has a paper on this. Actually, I can drop a link to that in the chat if you want. but you know, things like where the vehicle is operating. It's not just crashes per mile. It's crashes per mile normalized as much as you possibly can for particularly the operating domain. But hopefully at some point it would be wonderful if we could start to put together data sets that normalize across a number of things, maybe the cost of the vehicle, education level of the driver. There's just a lot of different factors that we know contribute to different safety outcomes, and you gotta try and normalize those to the extent that you can.
Roadway type, we can filter by that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so this won't tell us how many miles were necessarily driven in this domain. It's more the domain where the crash itself happened, but that's still something that can be really interesting. So let's let Moody get into that.
So yeah, highway 106. This unknown section is crazy. I hate it.
Yeah,
but
me too.
There is this highway freeway. So we can like break things down and only look at let's take roadway type. We've got roadway type. We can filter that. So let's filter by like highway freeway, and we can then take this SV maneuver, pre-crash maneuver that we had before. Let's remove the proceeding straight. No, okay. So I was just wanting to see what is it with that vehicle that was going down the wrong way. What was that doing? Was it in a parking lot? No. Was it on a rural road? Was it on a street? Yeah, it was traveling wrong way down wrong way down a one-way street. There's wrong way down a one-way street.
Is it really?
Not a one-way street, sorry. It's there's a
surface road?
There's a skit, sorry, that
okay.
I just got stuck in my head by a comedian called Limmy, and where he invents a song called Wrong Way Down a One-Way Street, and he just sings that line over and over again. So it's just a street. I don't know if it's a one-way street, but it's was traveling the wrong way down that street. And Honda, Acura, and Tesla are the only ones that have had incidents on streets.
Okay, so outside of a highway.
Yeah. So I'll remove the pre-crash movement, put the roadway type into columns, and we can see where each of these crashes happened.
Yeah. So and this is important, because again, as we were discussing, like the road type, like there are many more crashes, right, in like on rural roads and in urban sort of surface streets than there are on freeways. But also, these data for ADAS, right, with the exception of Tesla's full self-driving beta, which is sort of explicitly has a city streets functionality. My understanding is, I think like basically every other level 2 system is pretty much just designed to be on the freeway. Now, they don't all have necessarily like hard
ODD restrictions,
ODD restrictions the way like Cadillac Super Cruise does.
Honda definitely doesn't.
Yeah, so you're seeing people using Honda's driver assistance systems on roads that it wasn't necessarily designed for, as far as we can tell, and getting into crashes. So that which is essentially what's been one of the concerns with Tesla. Obviously, they've been sort of the main focus on this concern, but this shows that like this is not just a Tesla issue. Other people are activating their ADAS outside of the domain for which it was designed, and they're having crashes, and that's not a good thing, right? And so I think one of the outcomes, in terms of policy that comes out of these data. And it might not be right away. Again, they'll be updating these files every month. So we'll, and I think it'd be fun to come and maybe even do another live stream again and sort of check check up on the updates and see how these data have evolved.
Yeah.
But I think one of the policies that could come out of this is that maybe, going forward, there will be a requirement that level 2 systems have to have some kind of strong restriction where, users can only activate them in the domains for which they're designed. I think that could definitely help avoid, some crashes, and even the deaths that NTSB has investigated.
Yeah, so this is the recommendation from NTSB about restricting ODDs to the places which they were designed. Tesla's, of course, never responded to that, but Honda's not on that list.
Oh, interesting.
But, yeah, so this is when NTSB were like, you should restrict the usage of your ADAS systems to places which were designed. I'm not aware that Honda has a system that's meant to work at intersections. Parking lots maybe, but like streets, like these shouldn't be there here. Fords, I think, also shouldn't have that.
Yep. So, and actually, I would love to look at the VRU data and see, can we compare domain and VRU involved crashes? Let's see. Hang on. Sorry.
Where would the VRU crashes be?
Hold on.
Oh, is it crash with?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It would
so
be,
I can go
with.
Crash with, and I can. Okay, let me put that into. I'll pull away the roadway types for now, and I'll put crash with into columns, and we can see. We can see what. That. Yeah. So with an animal is here. First responder vehicles, only 2, and it was Tesla. Only Tesla. Yeah. Heavy
trucks. So Tesla against 7, and we know that multiple people have died in crashes with trucks, semi trucks.
Honda hit a cyclist.
Honda hit a cyclist. Yep. Okay. So that's interesting. So we know Honda was the only other automaker that had crashes outside of that highway freeway ODD, and lo and behold,
significant numbers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And one of those is a non-motorist cyclist. So Tesla doesn't have any VRU crashes, which is interesting.
They do. They've got pedestrians.
Okay, so you don't have cyclists. Okay.
No.
But so let's just really quick on the Honda one. So Honda, what this is essentially telling us is, well, and actually, let's see, we'd have to go back into that single entry and see if these are the same incidents.
Okay, well, I could do that. So we could crash with, I can put that into filters, and I can look at was non-motorist cyclist.
Yep.
We could do that.
And
do you want it by roadway?
Yep.
So we can, where was it? Road type.
Actually,
roadway type columns. It was at an intersection.
It was at an intersection. Yep. So, and that's also, ADAS are not designed to be used at intersections on surface roads. And someone in a Honda was using one and crashed into a cyclist. This is not good. Even just one crash like this is not good. And especially when, again, there may be questions about how complete the reporting is in this. Even one incident is scary. So let's look at pedestrians. So Tesla was the only one with pedestrians.
Yeah.
We have 3 pedestrians hit.
We can look at that. So crashway with pedestrians and the roadway type. 1 at intersection and 2 unknowns.
Okay.
Unknown strikes again.
Yep. Okay, so crash with, hang on, I just want to see if we can.
There's other fixed object, other C narrative, but the narrative is redacted, so that doesn't mean anything. Passenger car 52, pickup truck 8, pole or tree, SUV, unknown, and van.
Yep. So other fixed object, unknown is the biggest, other fixed object is next, then passenger
we can see
car.
where that happened. So other fixed object, and we can look at the roadway type. Highway, mostly. For all of, well, that, and which is expected. But yeah, fixed objects. Lego La is asking why won't Tesla share their info with NHTSA? We could have much stronger underlying data to work with. Also, ADAS and ADS. Well, this is NHTSA starting that process. So this is the first time that they've required any sort of reporting on incidents with ADAS in a regular sort of way. So it'll get better as time goes on, I'm sure. But this is a start.
This is a start. So actually, we have I received a question on Twitter. I don't know if this person is actually watching the stream at all. And I think it's sort of a rhetorical question, but I think it's worth bringing up. It says, and why is all the Tesla narrative data, i.e. the relevant details, redacted when all other manufacturers contain nearly all of their narrative data? So this goes to, so there's a field here where, the reporting entity can provide sort of a narrative account of the crash. And again, I think, I've said this already multiple times in the stream, I'm going to say it again. Anytime you're looking at crash data or even a specific individual crash, there's always going to be multiple causes or multiple contributing, factors in that. And so sometimes, you have crashes that can't really fit neatly into one category. And so one of the options that they have about the sort of ADAS involvement piece of it is unknown C narrative, in which, which is going to be about sort of situations where it's not really clear. And here's the narrative that sort of discusses why it may or may not actually be involved or something. And so these narrative fields, I think this is a great point by this person who brought it up, Gordon Gone Wild on Twitter, at Gone_Gordon. It's a really good point. I mean, I think that these narratives, I mean, first of all, I assume some of them are redacted because there is some personally identifying information, in which case, like blank out that person's name. Although I guess you can't really do that in it'd be a little hard to do that. It's
redacted because it may contain confidential business information. But Ed, so look at this is so needlessly shitty from Honda. One of the narratives that they did not redact, this is an incident they're reporting that happened. They said the customer was driving when a Tesla sedan crashed into the customer's everyone else is like, there was a re-rendered by another vehicle, etc. But this one was like specifically names Tesla as the other vehicle that crashed. Customer's passenger tire causing the vehicle to flip multiple times. The customer called to thank Honda for the vehicle's safety features, airbags, and design. The customer alleged that the lane keep assist and adaptive cruise control were engaged.
Okay.
So that's just so needlessly. Well, it's good to have that information, but
but it is definitely snarky. I mean, they did not need to say the customer called to thank Honda for the vehicle's safety features, airbags, and design. Like, okay, that's not really narrative related to the crash itself. So, but yeah, no. So I agree. So hopefully, hopefully, NHTSA is learning from this process as well. We discussed a little bit at the beginning of this that this has not been done before. There's no playbook for how to do this. And hopefully NHTSA learns a little bit about, and this is why one of the reasons we're doing this stream is to just kind of provide some real-time, feedback that hopefully they can watch and see where we got confused by things and where we have issues. And I would say, like number one was probably the mysterious other folder. I think that's the lack of clarity on that is really unfortunate. But I think one of the issues here is, are they giving people too much scope to redact these narrative sections? Those are the parts that I'm interested in part because you can't just throw it into like those narratives. It's qualitative insight, right? That you can't just throw into not to be dismissive at all. Like quantitative analysis is super important, but I think the qualitative analysis of getting some texture on sort of what's going on in some of these crashes could be really interesting. And I think that NHTSA should be able to provide that with the person, with the PII redacted. I don't see why that would be impossible. So hopefully they'll improve on that going forward.
Let me just split. I think you can add a split view somewhere. Yeah. Split. Split. Right. And I will move that there. And I can keep that in there. Great. So you can see here that if we remove this, if we set up this filter, sort and filter, great. And we go up to the very top, sort and filter this information. Can I filter the narrative? There we go. Right. There we. I just made it very, very large. Narrative, and let's get rid of the redacteds, and then zoom in. It looks like Honda make the most use of this narrative field. So we can see the reporting entity on the left-hand side, and we can see what they were saying here. So there is, hey, Matt's here, has finished his interview with Alex. I think you were doing that this morning.
Oh, cool.
The smoking tire. So there was one about a water bottle I saw, like the customer's kid customer reported that he was yielding to make a turn when his son threw a water bottle at him, causing him to look away from the street. As a result, he rear-ended the vehicle in front of him. The customer alleges that the lane keep assist system and adaptive cruise control were engaged. So Honda are the ones that have not redacted information the most. But also they're using this narrative field to talk about how great their systems are sometimes. The customer was rear-ended and they're calling us to thank us. Customer was driving on a highway when a drunk driver rear-ended her. Customer was at an intersection when two drunk drivers hit a vehicle, causing it to spin, catch on fire, and then hit the customer's vehicle. Then the customer's vehicle caught on fire. The customer alleges that the lane keep assists us. They're all alleges. So Honda doesn't have a way of detecting when this happens automatically. These are all customer reported. Yeah, it's all customer called. Toyota has unconfirmed allegations.
Yeah. So one of the file or the fields is just who's reporting it, right? And as we were looking at the summary earlier, like the majority of these crashes were reported via telematics. Certainly in ADAS, I think 258 of them come from telematics, but 139 come from a category that NHTSA describes as complaint/claim. And only 12 of them come from law enforcement, which I think is really interesting. And I think one of the ways that NHTSA may sort of move towards improving this is potentially sort of reaching out to more, local police departments and things like that, making them more aware of these reporting requirements and trying to improve like law enforcement's ability to accurately report the relevant data for crashes where there are allegations that ADAS or an ADS was involved. Because I think, complaints from customer, I mean, NHTSA relies a lot on complaints from customers. In fact, people often don't realize that like, other than like basically NHTSA has really two sources of data for their traditional like defect monitoring and investigation work. And one is just from the companies themselves and what they choose to report. And really the only other one is customer complaints. And if you've looked at the database that NHTSA keeps for customer complaints, there's no standard for how to report or what to report or whatever. So it's a very like, it's kind of a free for all. Definitely one of those things where, you have to warn people, like, don't just, try and pull raw numbers out of these, and have them represent, or act like they represent sort of like a scientific survey of, or anything like that. So, and actually one of the things that someone had sort of mentioned was, in the conversations that were going on before this release, someone was like, oh, it looks kind of like NHTSA is just creating another version of their complaint database. A number of them, again, I'm a little surprised that proportionately so many of them, of the level 2 crashes anyway, come from customer complaints.
Do you think
I assume that
do you think that this might cause some, like, for example, Tesla could turn off knowing whether or not incidents happened due to this reporting requirement, so that they wouldn't need to report anything until someone called them and let them know, which would push these numbers down?
I mean, yeah, Tesla, it has consistently sort of been able to find like patterns of behavior that the drafters of like various regulations did not anticipate. And I think like the California, disengagement reporting situation is a great example of that. Like, I don't think anyone expected, a player in the space to tell customers that something is full self-driving and then tell it
doesn't drive itself. Yeah.
The regulators that it's not actually self-driving, it's just a level 2 assistance system. And so this may be, I guess in theory, I don't think there's anything in the SGO that sort of says like, no, you can't roll back your like data collection,
and then it put them on even keel with Honda. Like, that's because Honda doesn't have that capability. Like, everything in here, as far as the ones with narrative that haven't been redacted, like, it's just the customers telling them when something's happened, which means that there's probably a whole bunch where the customer didn't bother to call up Honda or let them know, in which case the numbers go down. But because Tesla can automatically get reports of what's happening on its vehicles, then its numbers are going to be skewed higher.
Yeah. And we said that sort of at the beginning, and we'll repeat it as many times as we need to, that not all automakers have the same visibility into the crashes that their vehicles go into, especially on the kinds of short timelines that are sort of required. So the reporting requirements, by the way, and this is a crucial thing, and this is why I think, Moody, the scenario you raised about Tesla sort of potentially no longer collecting this kind of data, is that the reporting requirement is from when the reporting entity finds out about it. So again, like if you have like full real-time telematics data coming off all your cars, and as soon as a crash happens, like it's going to be easier for you to report this data. And if you don't have those capabilities, then you're relying on things like customer complaints, police reports, things like that. And so maybe, this does kind of create a perverse incentive for automakers to know less about what's happening when their cars crash.
Yep. Which would mean that the safety reports would disappear from Tesla's perspective with their self-published thing. But I mean, they could say that we've already proved things are better. We don't need to. But like, how do they keep developing and gauging their progress if that gets removed? That's going to be very difficult to keep doing that. And then there's the other side of that coin, is NHTSA might start prescribing for vehicles to start having some sort of sensors on there that's capable of knowing about when a crash happens. But that would likely take years, if not the better part of a decade, before any sort of prescriptive system like that ends up being compulsory. So
yeah, the rulemaking processes are really long here, but
it's really
actually,
long.
Yeah, one of the things that might be kind of relevant to what you're saying is, there has been for a while in the U.S. A law around it was called an EDR, which is an event data recorder. And think of this as like the black box on an airplane, only for a car, right? And these EDRs, so there's a statutory definition. I don't have it in front of me in this law. And basically the point of the law was to say, like the EDR data belongs to the customer, not to the manufacturer of the vehicle. The EDR data has to be readable by a third-party device. Those are the two big ones. There's a number of other ones, but it's basically a consumer protection law. And it defined an EDR as, a system that records data, like, again, I don't remember the exact number, something like 7 seconds before a crash and during, and up to like, whatever. Like there's some statutory definition about the window of time in which an EDR collects data. And for years, Tesla did not comply with these rules, this law. It's not just a rule, it's with this law, because they claimed that they collected data outside of just that one window. So they did collect data within the window of that's defined in the statutory definition of an EDR, but they were also recording before that window and after that window. And as a result, it doesn't meet the statutory definition of an EDR, and therefore the law does not apply to them, which is like pretty ballsy if you think about it. It's like saying, just hypothetically, I don't know. It's like saying, well, I don't have to, comply with, rules about, about guns because, I have like a howitzer or whatever. And that's not like a gun in the definition of the law. So something along those lines, where it's like, what Tesla had was not an EDR, it was an EDR plus. But because of the plus, they got away with for years, just like not complying with, again, the law of the land about who that data belongs to, and how it needs to be treated. And oh, by the way, I mean, I don't think this was unrelated to the fact that like Tesla never admitted that Autopilot was involved in a crash before 2016. And the other thing that had never happened before 2016 was that after crashes, people actually started denying Tesla access to the onboard vehicle data and preserving chain of custody on it. I don't think that's purely a coincidence. And by the way, if you're not reading through the lines, like the implication here is that, there probably were Autopilot involved crashes well before 2016, the Gao Yanning case and the Josh Brown cases. And because Tesla would always get to that data first, and because now also we're learning things about how they apparently, in some cases, even, Autopilot will deactivate prior to a crash. There's a lot of plausible deniability, and Tesla set things up to have a lot of plausible deniability. So, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff.
I love how yellow some of the stuff is. Like it's very it's just very, I guess, evocative. Like the customer was carefully driving at 3 a.m. in the rain when an angry driver followed the customer and crashed into her. The customer alleges that the lane keep assist system and adaptive cruise control were on. It's just the Honda's, I don't know. I just, who wrote these for Honda is it's very, I just kind of love it.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's like the NHTSA defect database where it's just a customer submits something and then they're essentially just relaying that onward. And so that's another thing that, a customer may have reasons for alleging that an ADAS was active during one of these crashes when it wasn't, like potentially, like we don't, and especially if this is not something that's coming through telematics, then the OEM or whoever's doing this reporting, like they don't know as a matter of fact whether or not an ADAS was or was not active. All they can report is that a customer alleged that it was that ADAS was active, within 30 seconds or before the crash. And again, someone might get into a crash and decide to tell the police and the OEM that, oh yeah, ADAS was involved because they are worried about their own liability. Now, to be clear, ADAS does not really absolve anyone of any legal liability for crashes. But people don't know that. And so people may have reason to allege that these systems were involved when they were not in fact involved. So that's also a really important thing to keep in mind when looking at these data. But I think we're coming up on two.
Praise the vehicle safety features in the crash. Like reporting that in your accident reporting is, I don't know, it's next level. It's certainly interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how if other companies start to do this in the coming months, like as this gets released every month,
like guerrilla marketing. Like I just imagine the meeting at the OEM about this reporting, and like the guy from marketing chirps up and is like, hey, let's make sure people know that the customer said best car ever.
Yeah, tell them how angry the other driver was.
Yeah.
That crashed into,
yeah. So subjective reporting is definitely one of the issues here.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to look at in here, like any other fields you're interested in?
We haven't really looked at the ADS one much, have we?
Nope. We can.
We didn't even look at I didn't go through the summary. I mean, these data have been out for a while. I think the media is starting to do some reporting. I know we're coming up on 2 hours, and Moody, I know it's super late or early, depending on how you look at it.
Almost 3 a.m. So
you agreed to join for an hour. You stayed for 2. So I think we should pretty much just wrap it up for now.
Sure.
I think like any other data set, I think all the really good stuff comes from, taking some time with it, getting familiar with it, digging through it, finding, sort of the hidden insights. So I think we've, hopefully answered some questions here. I think I think we surfaced some things that I think are really interesting. I think, in particular, some of the stuff around, the Tesla's issues, like crashes with lane departure and driving the wrong way.
Driving the wrong way was one. Yeah. And Honda, and the prevalence of Honda and how much they're doing stuff outside of their operational design domain wasn't something I was anticipating.
Yeah. And hitting a cyclist. And I think that correlation between someone operating a level 2 system outside of the ODD and, also having, VRU injuries enter into the mix. I think that's also really interesting. So there's a lot of really good stuff here. It's been great to see like people tune into this. One other thing, since we've got like someone accusing me of bias in here in the chat. Let's just address this really quick here, because so Moody last night, I think didn't you say something? You had a crack about we were chatting and you said something about how Tesla fans are suddenly going to become like big fans of like, normalizing crash data.
Yeah, because it used to be, why are you so focused on a small number of deaths versus like there's so many number of deaths that happen out on the road every day, and now suddenly it's going to be, well, you need to look at the data in context, and you need to understand that Tesla has better reporting, and so it's just a
well,
suddenly,
like be careful what you wish for, Tesla fans, because if you really want to get into a conversation about the need to normalize data and look at it properly, I mean, Tesla has been, and again, this is I think one of the reasons why, for me, this is one of the reasons why just the fact that this data reporting is happening now is so important, is because if you have a vacuum, it gets filled with something, right? And what's been filled in the sort of data vacuum here is Tesla's like quarterly safety reports have been sort of the most prominent, as far as a lot of the public goes, sort of insight or whatever, or sort of data about sort of systems like autopilot and systems like it. And Tesla has put out this number that is very, very misleading, because it is not normalized for a whole bunch of really important factors. Now, these data don't address those specifically. For example, like unfortunately, these data are not telling us, how many miles in a given ODD, this system is being used for, so we can compare that with, apples to apples with human drivers in that ODD, which again is super important to normalize for. But this is a starting point to get real world data that really, fills this vacuum. So, ultimately, like, if you're a fan of Tesla, like, you don't have really much of a leg to stand on. Like, you can whine about some of this stuff, I guess, and you can say like, oh, it doesn't, we don't really know for sure. But like, the reality is that Tesla's been saying very confidently that their system is safer than a human, and they've been doing that using a really, really misleading statistical comparison. So like,
very cynical analysis.
So if you want to be like, data scientists, let's do this objectively, let's do this the right way, no bias. If you want to get into that kind of stuff, like, you got to be principled about it. And if you are principled about it, you're not going to be defending Tesla, because they're really some of the worst offenders on this. Now, the flip side of that is that, that doesn't give, people who are critical of Tesla the license to like be sloppy with their data. And I think we've been really careful about what conclusions can we actually draw from some of these things. And hopefully some of the stuff that we've discussed and sort of surfaced on this stream will give you all a sense of the kinds of things that you can start to look for in here. So I think there's going to be a lot more really interesting insights here. Let's go ahead and we can turn off the data.
There's just one thing from this data. This is ADS.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
It's like a 50-50 split between proceeding straight and stopped. So I'd guess this would be like getting rear-ended, or it could be that something came to a very sudden stop, and this would be the vehicle driving and it caused an incident with something else. These are ADS here. And Waymo and Transdev are the ones that have had the most incidents. Now, this ADS will be way more complete in terms of incidents, because these are going to be, well, with the exception of Comma, they're going to be and Tesla, I guess, for this one, they're going to be run by the companies developing the ADSs. So we'll see a much more complete system here, a complete reporting here compared to ADAS. But I was surprised that ADS is included in here. I thought it was just going to be ADAS. Yeah, Stefan, you're correct as well. Yeah, crash doesn't mean we caused it either, and that's addressed in that's addressed here in the narrative. Sometimes they sometimes go into that, but yeah, you'll always see some, but it's not always like it proceeding straight is a bit less forgivable than say a stopped one, or a changing lanes is a bit less. Like there's different sort of levels you can subscribe to those in terms of responsibility, just based on the category. But yeah, it's again, as when you boil things down to a number, you're always going to lose stuff. You're going to lose some information, and you're going to lose some resolution. And it's just about being mindful of what that information is and what it is that you're actually looking for and what assumptions you've made. So I think we've been pretty careful to not overstep or like make statements that accuse or say or make a claim that this data can't back up today.
Yeah. And again, I mean, there's some things that, you know, even if you assume that not all the data are great, I mean, the fact that, and we didn't really cover this, but like the fact that in the ADAS, and you can see these in the summaries that NHTSA provided, where the damage on these vehicles took place. With ADAS, it's almost all in the front of the vehicle or unknown, which is a huge percentage. But it's almost all front left, front right. Only 32 ADAS involved crashes involved damage. Well, okay, to the rear, 17 to the rear left, 15 to the rear right. But again, like front is 124, front left 104, front right is 72.
That was
and
this.
Then yep. So that's ADAS, and then I don't know how quickly you can switch to the ADS one, because they have the same chart in the ADS document, and it says when damage was reported, the ADS equipped vehicles were most commonly damaged in the rear. Let's see, that's ADAS. Here I can.
There's the published initial round of data. Level 2,
here,
level 3 is available here. There we go.
There we go. Oh, here we go. I got you as well.
We've both got.
No, we got both. Okay. Here I'll turn off mine. Actually, hang on. There you go. Okay.
ADS, yeah.
Yeah, so this is ADS. So again, here, just want to point out, like, you know, the majority of these crashes involve the rear of the vehicle getting damaged.
Compared to
right?
this, yeah.
Compared to the ADAS, which is overwhelmingly for the front of the vehicle. So this is something where like the trend is big enough where like, okay, even if you assume there's some, you know, problems with reporting, questionable, you know, whatever, like this is not like super clean. There's some noise along with the signal in these data. But this trend is big enough where it's like, okay, like this tells you something really important. Like ADAS it's more likely that these ADAS crashes were because legally speaking, you know, usually in a rear end crash, for example, which is like the most common kind of crash, you know, the person hitting from behind is always responsible. It's safe to take away from this that ADAS is, you know, involved in at fault crashes more than ADS, whereas the majority of these ADS crashes are almost certainly not the fault of the ADS. Like that's a really important takeaway right there. And I think it's one that, you know, kind of is big enough that you can kind of get past some of the hangups that you should have about this data.
Yeah. And this is, we've known about this for a while in terms of ADS is a most often rear-ended. That's the most common type of crash. But with this ADAS, by the way, we need to point out how overrepresented Tesla is in this. So when you're looking at this, it's almost like what percentage was Tesla? It's like out of 339, 271 crashes are Teslas. So like, if you took away everything that wasn't Tesla, this is essentially a Tesla report with like sprinklings of Honda on top of it. So making conclusions just about ADAS from like ADAS in general from this also wouldn't be totally correct in my opinion. Like
you'd have to be very careful. Yeah.
It's looking at a very Tesla heavy reporting of it. But ADS is a lot more general. That one was, mostly, what is it, Waymo and Waymo and Transdev with the
Transdev, and I'm not sure. I was just trying to look. Like, I'm not sure who. So Transdev has operation. Like, they will run operations for other companies, and I'm not sure how like who's if what kind of vehicles they're operating, where they're operating. Can you look at some of those Transdev ones actually really quick and just let's see if we
Like
can
what's-
just see like where they're taking place would be the sort of the easiest.
yeah, I can do that. So get rid of pre-crash movement, and we can start looking at the roadway type.
No, I mean like what state?
Oh, what state?
Okay, I see. It's Waymo. So this Transdev. See, this is what I was wondering. See, because
It's Transdev Waymo.
It's Transdev does operations for Waymo. They
okay.
So yeah. So again, here too, it's possible, and this is something we would need to go and do some more data. It's possible that Waymo and Transdev are both.
It's the same
crashes.
Yeah, the VIN number is identical between these ones, and they would show up as two different ones. Good catch. Exact same vehicle ID.
Because Transdev is not an ADS developer. They just do operations for, and I think they do them for a variety of companies. They're a huge company. They do a lot of just like transit operations in the non-autonomous space, but they've carved out a business as sort of doing AV fleet operations. Waymo, I think, is their biggest customer, certainly one of them. And so, so now we know, right, in this ADS data, we have a lot of, and again, like NHTSA tells us there's some double counting going on here. But, we don't really know right away. It's going to take a lot of I think going through this and hand curating these data and pulling out some of this double reporting and some of these other things before we can really go too much further in analysis, right?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what Taylor does with this in the next few days. It's just it's things like here, General Motors and Cruise both reported the same incident, one after the other. So Cruise is using GM vehicles in order to operate. So both of those entities reported the same incident. So those all need to be separated out from each other. So just looking at this ends up not exactly being being too good. But there you go.
All right. Well, this was fun. I like how kind of raw and spontaneous it was. I love that people showed up. I mean, we gave no notice for this. I just tweeted about it last night, and we had a pretty solid, 60, 70 people for a good chunk of that stream. So really glad we did this. Huge thank you to Mahmoud Hikmet. Honestly, data wrangling is not my forte.
Neither is it mine. I just want you to know, a data scientist would have done a much better job than I did. I am just I just know how to look at stuff with finger in the air sort of thing.
Well, and you're willing to stay up until 3 a.m. New Zealand time
in
order to jump and do this right when the data drops. So thank you so much. And again, I think, is impressive work, and especially impressive when you consider he was just doing all this between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. his local time. So huge thank you, Moody. And if folks out there are doing work with this data, they're sanitizing it, they're doing analysis, whatever else, if that's something you want to chat and chat about and share with folks, find us both on Twitter. I'm at Tweetermeyer. That's tweet ERMEYER. Mahmoud, you're at Moody. Is that right?
Yeah, Moody Hikmet.
Moody Hikmet. Yeah, MOODYHIKMET. I realize in the future we should probably just put that on our little name thing down there so people know how to go follow us. I have DMs open, so if you are doing work with this data and you want to share that or discuss it sometime, we could definitely do another live stream like this. So hit up my DMs. Moody, I don't know if
My
hit
DMs
up
are
my
open
DMs.
too. Like if anyone has like technical questions about autonomous vehicles or just wants to know about stuff that they're confused about, no stupid questions. I'll always try to respond whenever I can. Or like more than likely, I've probably got a video out there that addresses the question that you have, in which case I'll just throw you to my YouTube channel and respond to your comment afterwards.
Yeah, and you should check out Moody's YouTube channel anyway. If you're interested in any of the stuff that we've been discussing today, he's got some really, really good videos that explain some really important aspects of the technology and yeah, some of these safety issues. So with that, we will go ahead and wrap up this stream. Again, thank you again, Moody, for doing this. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Yeah, it's really encouraging that like people are curious about, ADAS and ADS crash data. It's not the most obvious thing for people to be interested in and excited about, and
it's so
super
niche.
important.
Yeah,
it's very niche, but it's also really important. I mean, road safety, it kills 40,000 Americans a day, so it is something that a year.
A year. It's about 100. It's about 100 a day.
100 a day though, so that is a big deal, and technology can make a difference, but again, it's super important that we look at what the technology is doing with clear eyes, and this data is a start towards understanding it better, and hopefully crowding out some of the less helpful sort of data that's been sort of widely accepted up to this point.
I also, on behalf of the chat, you've been asked about Ludicrous 2 multiple times.
Oh yes, I'm sorry, I have gotten multiple. Yeah, so no official plans yet. I am working on a number of drafts, including some that I've got some stuff submitted to a couple outlets. So I think right now, I've been very heartened to see the book sales have been taking off again. If you live in Portland, Oregon, by the way, there's a 3-year anniversary release party. I didn't do a release party really for Ludicrous when it first came out, and we're going to kind of do a 3rd anniversary party on August 20th, which will be the 3rd anniversary of it coming out. If you live in Portland and you're a fan and you want to come to my house, I guess, hit up my DMs. I'm not going to just put that information out publicly. But if you don't seem too sketchy, I would love to have you come and hang out in my backyard and have a beer and celebrate 3 years of Ludicrous. So the answer is I don't know yet.
Can you call it? Can you call your next book Full Self Reading?
So I'll tell you. I will say this: the thing that made me more tempted to write another book than anything else was the suggestion, and I don't remember who made it, which I feel bad about now because it's an amazing suggestion. Like I said, it's the thing that got me most intrigued by the idea of writing another book that's happened since the book came out, which is that the suggestion that I name the book Too Fast, Too Ludicrous. And up to hearing that, I've been like, yeah, maybe someday. And I just love how memey that title is. And the story got so memey that I feel like a follow-up book would have to really lean into that. And I feel like Too Fast, Too Ludicrous is the right way to do that. So I don't know. I guess that's a roundabout way of saying I'm kind of getting a little bit more tempted to think about maybe doing that. But in the meantime, I'm just going to be, publishing at a variety of outlets, and hopefully doing more sort of live stuff like this, when it makes sense to. And when
you had a piece in the New York Times. You had one in Slate. You're doing pretty well on the rounds.
Yeah, well, I wrote the book because I was really frustrated with sort of feeling like everything that got published on the internet went down the memory hole. But I feel like stuff now gets so the Twitter thread that inspired that Slate story, which I think the Slate story did really well. I had family members being like, this showed up on my Facebook feed, very normie people who do not normally get exposed to my work were reading it. And the Twitter thread that inspired that, it kind of has these little surges of it starts getting shared around, kind of on a regular basis. So like, I think the, clearly like the vibe has shifted on Tesla. I think also clearly, NHTSA is moving towards taking
They're
some kind
doing
of action.
something. Yeah.
That
Something's
was one thing
happening.
we didn't really discuss here, but that is sort of one of the overtones of all of this, is that, there's a reason they started asking for this data. And I think it's because they know they have to move towards, some kind of regulatory enforcement action. And there's a bunch of other, little indications that may be happening. So, but the main thing with the book for me is that, like, what I really don't want to do is try and write another book about a story that I don't have a high confidence level in sort of like what the ending is, right? That was one of the hardest things about the book. There were a lot of hard things about writing the book. One of them was that it's like, how do you try and create a narrative arc when you have no idea like how things are going to end up? And I think
how do you know where to stop talking about stuff as well? Like what's the scope is insanely difficult to do when you're talking about Tesla.
Yeah. And so one of the things I'm really proud about in the book is that I feel like you can pick it up now, almost 3 years after it came out. And I feel like it does surface the sort of underlying sort of dynamics and cycles that have been driving Tesla, and help explain why it's ended up in such a bizarre, like, memey place. But, I don't want to have that was hard. It was painfully difficult to kind of walk that line. And so I really want to feel confident that, there's some closure to this story of some kind, right? That will allow me to then just kind of write the story and not have to, like, do this whole figuring it out as it goes along. And then, because, like, literally when you're writing a book, like, and then all of a sudden you get these news stories come out and you don't know in the moment that a news story breaks, like, how significant is this going to be? What kind of timeline is the thing that it raises going to play out on? Do I then include it? Do I not include it? And, like, the book came out in 2019. And so like 2018 and the first half of 2019 was when I was most in the crunch mode. And, like, those were extremely eventful years for those of you who've been following Tesla for a while. And, like, so there was just constantly stuff happening, and it was so hard to know what to include and what not to include, and where it was all going to go. So long story short, let's see what happens over this next year. I have the sense that we're going to be moving towards more of a place of closure over the course of 2022. I could be very wrong about that. If that's the case, then, you may see another book sooner. If things continue to just drag along, we'll just
in the meantime, though, like, the book might not be talking about the specific incidents that are happening right now, but you could, like, a lot of the behind the scenes culture stuff would still be applicable to what's happening today, and it would give better context as to understanding how decisions over there get made. And definitely from an engineering perspective, everything you've written checks out from what I can see. So highly recommend you read the book if you haven't. Ludicrous by Ed. I didn't read it. I got it on Audible and listened to it in the car over the course of a week, but it was a good read.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Please do buy the book if you enjoyed this stream. Make it worth my while by buying the book.
Tom Champ is asking about, like, a documentary on the whole saga. Yeah, what do you mean by whole saga? Because I've like tried to tackle individual points, and it depends on how much you go into it. Like, I did one on Tesla's autopilot and the lack of a driver monitoring system in there, and that took me an hour. Like, it's an hour-long video on my YouTube channel. Just search my name and you'll see it. It's called Is Elon Musk Killing People? But I'm doing one on FSD, and the running time of that is an hour and a half long, and I'm 2/3 of the way through it. It's likely going to be over 2 hours in terms of total media that I'm making, explaining about all the issues of just FSD. But that is just one slice. Like, you could go into just that much detail about almost everything else. And then to give people the right amount of context around why things are bad, like, how do you educate an audience about what is the normal engineering testing process? Like, if I'm talking to an engineer, I could just say that they're not going through a verification validation process. But, like, a regular person doesn't know what that is. So with like every criticism that there is about Tesla from an engineering perspective, there's this like entire chunk of education that you need to do beforehand in order to prime someone to understand why whatever's happening is as bad as it is. And that's challenging, and I'm getting burnt out while working on it, and that's why it's taking so long. But yeah, part 3 coming eventually. I've got some other stuff in the works. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. So I mean, you're absolutely right, and so like I've been, one of the things I've been trying to do is get stuff on autopilot and full self-driving into an op-ed length piece, which is like 800 words, which is fairly concise for even a little slice of just the FSD and autopilot stuff. Like that is really hard. And so, I definitely, like, if there's a second book, it will focus a lot less on the traditional automotive manufacturing stuff than the first one did. Because I think clearly, Musk just had a quote come out yesterday that said, without, they don't solve FSD, Tesla's worth 0. Well, I definitely, would want to focus more on that. But again, this stuff is hard. And I think we need to see what, if anything, NHTSA is going to do now that it's starting to get all these data.
That's a good quote to start a chapter, Ed.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
So no promises. Yeah. But I'm thinking about it. So hopefully that answers your question. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much again to Moody for staying up late and hanging out with us and wrangling the data. We'll probably do something like this again. Who knows? Maybe we'll even just set something up monthly so that we can just kind of check in on the latest updates and see what's changed and what hasn't. So with that, I'm going to end the stream now. Thanks also to Russ Mitchell and Taylor Ogan for joining. It was great to have you both as well. So yeah, thank you, and we'll do it again. And in the meantime, we'll see you over on Twitter.
All right. See you later.